scientists claim they've solved the mystery of Alcatraz.
3 inmates who famously escaped Alcatraz more than 50 years ago may have made it out alive.
Alcatraz has always been more than just cold concrete and icy waters. It's a mystery cloaked in fog, wrapped in razor wire, and steeped in legend. For decades, people have stared out at that jagged island in San Francisco Bay, all wondering the same thing. Did they actually escape? Now, in 2025, a shocking new development has emerged. So precise, so deliberate, it's flipping long-held beliefs on their head.
More than 60 years after their infamous escape from Alcatraz.
But don't expect a neat conclusion. This isn't a story of clear-cut heroes or villains. It's about shadows, science, and a silent night still echoing with unanswered questions. What really happened beyond those prison walls? And just how close are we, finally, to the truth?
Now, a handwritten letter is again raising questions about whether the men survived the frigid waters and deadly currents of San Francisco Bay.
Inside America's most secure prison, Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, better known as The Rock, stood as the ultimate symbol of the U.S. government's harshest approach to incarceration. Perched on a remote island just 1.25 miles off the coast of San Francisco, Alcatraz began as a military fort in the 1850s before being transformed into a federal prison in 1934. Operated by the Federal Bureau of Prisons, it was built to contain inmates deemed too violent or disruptive for other institutions. From day one, Alcatraz was designed to be the end of the line, a maximum security fortress with minimum privileges. The prison itself was a marvel of engineering and security. Its main cell house, built between 1910 and 1912, included 4 cell blocks, a dining hall, a hospital, a library, and administration offices. The cells were cramped, bare, and enclosed with tool-resistant steel bars. Inmates were counted up to 13 times a day. The guard-to-prisoner ratio was the lowest in the country. Security was layered. Metal detectors, tear gas canisters, and armed guards stationed in elevated gun galleries ensured constant surveillance. Privileges such as work assignments, family visits, and even talking during meals had to be earned. Life at Alcatraz was rigid and psychologically grueling. With a capacity of roughly 312 inmates, it was rarely full, but it held some of the most notorious criminals in American history, like Al Capone and Machine Gun Kelly. The most dangerous inmates were sent to D Block, home to The Hole, infamous for its brutal isolation and inhumane conditions. There was no focus on rehabilitation, only control. Racial segregation was strictly enforced. Over the years, especially in the 1930s and 40s, security upgrades included electrified fencing, improved locking systems, and structural renovations. But the island fortress had a weakness: saltwater corrosion. By the early 1960s, the cost of maintaining the aging prison became unsustainable. Alcatraz officially shut down on March 21, 1963. Yet the legend endured. Today, the island is managed by the National Park Service and attracts over 1 million visitors a year. Restored areas give a haunting glimpse into what was once the nation's most feared penitentiary, a place where the line between punishment and survival was razor thin. Its walls may have been unbreakable, but its myth was even stronger, until one night, everything changed. The myth of the inescapable rock. Alcatraz wasn't just a prison. It was a symbol of absolute finality. Perched on a wind-whipped island in San Francisco Bay, it became the ultimate expression of American justice at its harshest. This wasn't simply where sentences were served. It was where the system exiled those it had given up on entirely. Its isolation, rigid routines, and fortress-like design gave rise to a powerful belief that escape wasn't just unlikely, it was impossible. This wasn't a superstition. It was backed by hard numbers. In 29 years of operation, no successful escape had ever been confirmed. Out of 14 known attempts, most escapees were either caught or killed. The few who disappeared into the bay were presumed drowned, claimed by freezing waters, violent currents, and the sheer distance to shore. To even try to escape Alcatraz was, in essence, to accept death. That grim certainty became part of the prison's identity. It wasn't only about confinement, it was about crushing any hope of getting out. Guards, administrators, and the public alike believed in the legend of The Rock, a place no man could leave alive. That belief gave Alcatraz its unmatched authority. But all of that changed in June 1962. On the night of June 11th, between 10:30 and 11 p.m., 3 inmates, Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin, vanished from their cells. The escape shook the institution to its core. Alcatraz had always been seen as invincible, but this one act shattered that image. Suddenly, the impossible had happened, or so it seemed, and with that came psychological shockwaves. The fortress had shown a crack. But unlike previous attempts, this one left no closure. The absence of definitive answers sparked doubt, then fascination, and eventually transformed the incident into something bigger than the prison itself. The 1962 escape is no longer just an event. It is the central turning point in the mythology of Alcatraz. Whether the men lived or died remains unknown. What is certain is that their disappearance pierced a national illusion. That crack in the rock allowed something to escape, not just men, but the legend itself. Frank Morris, the mastermind behind the escape. Frank Lee Morris was no ordinary inmate. He was a seasoned criminal with a razor-sharp mind and a reputation for slipping through the cracks of the system. The kind of man Alcatraz was built to contain. Orphaned at 11 and convicted by 13, Morris spent his formative years bouncing between foster homes and juvenile facilities. That instability didn't just harden him, it refined his survival instincts. With a criminal record that included armed robbery, drug possession, and multiple successful escape attempts, Morris was eventually transferred to Alcatraz in January 1960 after escaping from the Louisiana State Penitentiary. And from the moment he set foot on the island, he was already plotting his way out. At Alcatraz, Morris was housed near inmates John and Clarence Anglin and Alan West, men he had known from previous prison stints. With their cells lined up in close proximity, they could whisper back and forth through the night, quietly laying the groundwork for what would become one of the most daring and calculated escape plans in prison history. Morris quickly emerged as the leader. His intellect and prior escape experience made him the natural architect of the operation. Unlike others who had tried and failed, Morris wasn't banking on luck. He was going for perfection. For months, the group chipped away at the decaying concrete beneath the air vents in their cells, using stolen metal spoons, broken saw blades, and even a homemade drill fashioned from vacuum cleaner parts. To cover their tracks, Morris crafted fake vent grills from papier-mâché, using materials swiped from the prison library and maintenance shop. Even the sound of their drilling was masked. Morris played his accordion during music hour, using its wheezing notes to drown out the noise. This wasn't reckless improvisation. It was methodical, brilliant planning, a silent war on Alcatraz's reputation. The escape was more than a jailbreak. It was a direct assault on the myth of the inescapable prison. Morris and the Anglin brothers stitched together over 50 raincoats to build a 6x14-foot raft and life vests, sealing them using steam pipes to fuse the rubber. They even turned a concertina into a makeshift air pump to inflate the raft. Though the official story claims they drowned, no bodies were ever recovered, and a 2013 letter hinted that at least one of them might have survived. Whether Frank Morris perished in the frigid waters or went on to live in secrecy, one thing is clear. His escape remains the most ingenious in Alcatraz's history, and the moment that proved even the rock could be broken. The Anglin brothers, bound by blood and the will to escape. John and Clarence Anglin were more than just inmates. They were brothers bound by hardship, loyalty, and an unbreakable drive for freedom. Raised in a poor farming family in rural Florida, they were two of 13 siblings and grew up learning to rely on each other to survive. That brotherly bond became the backbone of their legendary escape from Alcatraz. Their criminal path, largely focused on bank robberies, eventually landed them in the Atlanta penitentiary. But repeated escape attempts marked them as troublemakers, prompting officials to send them to Alcatraz, America's supposed escape-proof fortress. At Alcatraz, they were reunited with Frank Morris, whom they had met during earlier prison sentences. Conveniently placed in adjacent cells next to Morris and fellow inmate Alan West, the brothers could whisper and plan in secret. With Morris masterminding the plan, the Anglin brothers became the hands that helped execute it. For months, they chipped away at crumbling concrete behind their cell vents, using stolen spoons and broken saw blades. While Morris focused on the mechanics of the escape, the Anglins handled logistics and concealment, crafting papier-mâché vent covers, gathering materials from their prison work assignments, and helping build essential gear for their breakout. They were key to assembling the 6x14-foot raft and life jackets, all fashioned from more than 50 stolen and repurposed raincoats. Using the prison steam pipes, they sealed the rubber seams and converted a concertina into a makeshift air pump to inflate the raft. Their understanding of daily prison routines, guard shifts, and access to supplies through prison labor made their planning even more effective. Every move was deliberate, every detail covered. Even the famous decoy heads, sculpted from soap, toilet paper, and real hair collected from the barbershop, were crafted with eerie precision to fool guards during nighttime checks. What followed their disappearance remains one of the most enduring mysteries in American criminal history. Despite a 1979 legal declaration of their deaths, scattered evidence suggests the Anglin brothers may have survived. A 2013 letter claimed that they had been in hiding. Earlier, officials had intercepted Christmas cards allegedly sent by the brothers, and a 1975 photograph surfaced appearing to show them living in Brazil. Former prison guards and family members interviewed by the BBC recalled the night of the escape as eerily silent. No noise, no alarms, just absence. If John and Clarence Anglin truly made it out alive, they didn't just break free from prison, they escaped the very myth of Alcatraz. They vanished not only from concrete walls, but from history itself, crafting the illusion. The brilliance of the 1962 Alcatraz escape didn't lie solely in chiseling through concrete or constructing a raft. It was in the masterful illusion that made the escape possible. One of the most crucial elements was the creation of eerily realistic dummy heads, which allowed Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers to vanish without immediate detection. These decoys were sculpted from an unusual mix of soap, toothpaste, and toilet paper, carefully shaped to mimic human faces. Painted in flesh tones with stolen art supplies and topped with real human hair, swept from the prison barbershop floor, the heads looked uncannily lifelike. But these weren't just clever props, they were essential to the plan. During nightly checks, guards didn't enter the cells or physically disturb inmates. They simply glanced in for signs of movement. Placed on pillows and partially hidden beneath blankets, the dummy heads, combined with carefully arranged clothing and towels to mimic the shape of sleeping bodies, created a flawless illusion of inmates at rest. It wasn't until the morning roll call on June 12th that guards realized something was wrong. By then, Morris and the Anglin brothers had already been gone for hours. The deception extended beyond the beds. Each man had dug a tunnel behind the air vent at the back of his cell. To conceal the growing holes, they crafted fake vent grills out of cardboard and paper mache using torn pages from prison library magazines. These grills blended seamlessly into the cell walls, fooling anyone who looked inside. Behind them, hidden in plain sight, were the escape routes they'd been carving out for months. What makes this illusion even more remarkable is how it fits into a broader tradition of prison escape strategies. Psychological warfare disguised as survival tactics. Throughout history, inmates have relied on ingenuity to outwit their captors, from smuggling messages in hollowed-out books to stitching guard uniforms from scraps of laundry. But few escape plots have matched the Alcatraz ruse in detail, precision, and theatrical flair. As FBI agent Michael Dyke put it, they didn't just dig out, they rehearsed a performance. This wasn't merely a physical breakout. The escapees staged a production that fooled not only the guards, but the entire prison system. For one night, their cells became a stage, and they played their roles to perfection, ghosts fading from within stone walls. But the illusion was only the opening act. The real escape took place in the shadows, beneath the surface, where the line between myth and reality began to blur. Digging to freedom, the heart of the Alcatraz escape plan was literally carved into the failing structure of the prison itself. Frank Morris, John and Clarence Anglin, and Alan West found and exploited a key vulnerability: salt-damaged concrete behind the air vents beneath their sinks. Over the course of several months, they painstakingly chipped away at the weakened material using stolen metal spoons, broken saw blades, and even a homemade drill built from a vacuum cleaner motor. Working under the cover of night, they carefully carved tunnels that led to an unguarded maintenance corridor behind the cell block. This was not a feat of brute strength, but of surgical precision and extreme patience. To avoid detection, the men used cardboard and paper mache vent covers painted with stolen art supplies to mimic the surrounding walls. The illusion was so effective that guards noticed nothing amiss during routine inspections. They timed their digging during music hour, when prisoners were allowed to play instruments. The wheezing sound of Morris's accordion masked the noise of drilling, turning the prison into a covert construction zone. Once the holes were large enough to crawl through, they accessed an abandoned upper level of the prison where they established a hidden workshop. Here, they stored supplies and worked on escape gear, including the raft and paddles. The deteriorating conditions of Alcatraz, which stood atop aging military fortifications, allowed them to move undetected through the old service tunnels. Former inmates and later investigators would describe the prison's foundations as rotting and breaking apart, providing just enough opportunity for the escapees to operate undisturbed. One of their final tasks was to reach the ventilation shaft at the top of the block. Climbing 30 feet using plumbing pipes, they pried off the grate and replaced one of the bolts with a fake one molded from soap, yet another detail that reflected their ingenuity. By the time they were ready, they had carved a precise, undetectable route from their cells to the roof. Their success wasn't just about finding a way out. It was about turning the prison's own aging infrastructure against itself. In doing so, they achieved what no one else ever had: an almost surgical escape from the most secure prison in America. The Raincoat Raft in the icy bay. With their escape tunnel finished and the prison's upper levels quietly navigated, the final and most dangerous challenge lay ahead: the icy, unforgiving waters of San Francisco Bay. The water temperature hovered between 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and the currents were notoriously treacherous, conditions that had long contributed to Alcatraz's reputation as inescapable. But Morris and the Anglin brothers weren't just fleeing prison, they were escaping from an island fortress. To pull it off, they engineered a homemade raft and life vest from over 50 stolen raincoats. It was an incredible feat of improvisation and determination. The raft, measuring approximately 6 by 14 feet, was assembled in their secret workshop above the cell block. They stitched the raincoats together with thread taken from prison workrooms and sealed the seams using heat from the prison's steam pipes. To inflate the raft, they converted a concertina, similar to a small accordion, into a functioning air pump. Even their paddles were handmade, likely from plywood scavenged during work assignments. Every tool they needed was hidden in plain sight. On the night of June 11, 1962, the trio reached the northeastern shore of the island and launched their raft into the darkness. Their goal, Angel Island, less than 2 miles away. For a while, silence followed, but soon traces of the escape began to emerge. On June 14th, the Coast Guard discovered a homemade paddle. That same day, a sealed envelope containing the Anglin brothers' personal items washed ashore. A week later, fragments of the raft and a makeshift life vest were found near the Golden Gate Bridge. Still, no bodies were ever recovered. Many officials, including Warden Richard Willard, remained convinced the men had drowned. In a BBC interview, Willard pointed to the chilling wind and waves and asked, "Do you think you could make it?" Others, however, including FBI agents and analysts, argued that the sophistication of the escape and precision of the raft construction suggested otherwise. Scientific studies later confirmed that, if launched during a specific tidal window, the escape could indeed have succeeded. Whether they were swallowed by the bay or slipped quietly into a new life, the Raincoat Raft endures as one of the most innovative and symbolic acts of defiance against what was once the most secure prison in America. Allen West, the man left behind. Allen West was originally one of the 4 inmates involved in planning the daring Alcatraz escape. A longtime prisoner on the island since 1957, West had a shared history with Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers from previous incarcerations. Their close proximity in neighboring cells gave them the perfect opportunity to quietly devise the now legendary escape plan. West played an active role in nearly every phase of the operation. He chipped away at the wall behind his sink, collected materials for the raft and the decoy heads, and helped build the escape road itself. But when the moment of truth arrived on the night of June 11, 1962, West hit a fatal snag. He couldn't make it through his tunnel. According to his later confession, his exit hole was too small. He had either misjudged the final layer of concrete or failed to break through entirely. In a desperate attempt to widen the hole, West worked frantically as the others waited. But time was running out, and eventually Morris and the Anglin brothers were forced to leave him behind. Trapped in his cell, West could do nothing but watch his chance at freedom slip away, not due to fear, but to a few stubborn inches of concrete that refused to break. By morning, prison guards discovered signs of the escape. West quickly cooperated, giving authorities a full account of the plan. He detailed everything, from the hidden utility corridor and rooftop route to their intended destination, Angel Island. His testimony became the cornerstone of the manhunt that followed. West even helped point investigators toward evidence left behind, including a paddle and personal items linked to the Anglins. Still, the escapees were never found. This led some to speculate that Morris and the Anglins may have anticipated West could talk and change their route to avoid capture. In the end, West avoided the deadly risks of the freezing waters, but paid the price of lost freedom. When Alcatraz was shut down in 1963, West was transferred and eventually completed his sentence. Though his name is often overshadowed by those who vanished into legend, West's involvement was critical. He provided the most detailed insider account of the escape and remains a pivotal figure in the enduring mystery of Alcatraz. In the mythic story of The Rock, Allen West stands as the one man left behind, a witness to a breakout that may have truly succeeded, a chilling confession, or clever hoax. In 2013, more than half a century after the infamous Alcatraz escape, a stunning twist reignited the mystery. A letter allegedly penned by John Anglin arrived at the San Francisco Police Department. In it, the writer claimed, "I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962. Yes, we all made it that night, but barely." The letter went on to state that Frank Morris had died in 2005, Clarence Anglin in 2008, and that John himself was terminally ill, offering to surrender in exchange for medical treatment. The message triggered a media frenzy and spurred law enforcement into re-examining a case that had long been considered closed. Quietly, the FBI reopened its investigation. The letter underwent thorough forensic testing. Handwriting analysis, fingerprint examination, and DNA testing were all conducted to verify its authenticity. Yet despite these efforts, the results were inconclusive. The handwriting didn't definitively match known samples, and there was no usable DNA or fingerprints. The confession sat in a gray area, plausible enough to spark interest, but lacking the concrete evidence to prove it real. The public remained unaware of the letter until 2018, when CBS affiliate KPIX broke the story. The timing of the revelation, paired with decades of rumored sightings and claims from the Anglin family, reignited fascination with the escape. Even before the letter, the Anglin family had long claimed to receive Christmas cards from the brothers. A much-disputed 1975 photograph even surfaced, supposedly showing John and Clarence in Brazil. The letter's chilling content, describing life on the run, traveling across states, and living quietly in hiding, might be the most persuasive piece of evidence, yet suggesting that the escape was successful. The U.S. Marshal Service, which still officially holds the case, has refused to close the file. In 2022, they released updated age-progressed images of Morris and the Anglins, along with renewed public appeals for tips. While many investigators still believe the men drowned in the frigid bay waters, others argue there are simply too many unanswered questions to be certain. Whether the letter is a genuine confession or an elaborate hoax, it has become one of the most provocative elements in the Alcatraz legend. It reflects our cultural obsession with outlaws who vanish into thin air, escaping not just prison, but history itself. In a world of constant surveillance and digital footprints, the idea that three men could vanish without a trace for over 50 years borders on myth. Much like D.B. Cooper or Billy the Kid, the Alcatraz escapees have been elevated to near legendary status, symbols of rebellion, and the enduring allure of unsolved mysteries. As former U.S. Marshal Michael Dyke once said in a 2016 interview, "When the underdog beats the system, people love a good mystery. And it's not just about the idea that they may have survived. The story taps into something deeper, a belief that even in the most secure systems, there are cracks where freedom might still slip through." Just when the story seemed to fade into legend, science and confession collided, bringing us closer to the truth than ever before. Science versus skepticism. For years, prison officials and federal investigators firmly believed that Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers didn't survive their daring escape from Alcatraz. The frigid, fast-moving waters of San Francisco Bay were widely considered a natural death trap. In a 1964 BBC interview, Warden Richard Willard famously asked, "Do you think you could make it?" A question that reflected the era's overwhelming skepticism. The assumption that even if the men escaped the island, the bay would have sealed their fate ultimately led the FBI to close the case in 1979, declaring the trio legally dead. But that certainty has eroded over time, thanks to science. In 2014, a team of Dutch researchers used advanced computer models to simulate the tidal conditions on the night of June 11, 1962. Their findings were astonishing. If the men launched their raft between 11 p.m. and midnight, they could have been carried safely toward Angel Island. That window of time aligns with estimates of their departure, meaning the escape wasn't just possible, it may have been perfectly timed. The study reignited public and investigative interest. The 2013 letter allegedly written by John Anglin, once brushed off, now seemed more credible. When combined with physical evidence like a homemade paddle, personal belongings, and parts of the raft found after the escape, the scientific data painted a plausible picture. Survival wasn't just a fantasy, it may have been reality. And yet, skepticism remains. U.S. Marshals have expressed doubt that convicted criminals like Morris and the Anglins could vanish and live quiet, law-abiding lives. Still, the case file remains open. In 2022, authorities released new age-progressed renderings of the men, suggesting they haven't given up hope of solving the mystery. This enduring fascination speaks to something deeper than just a prison break. The Alcatraz escape taps into a uniquely American narrative, the desire to beat the system. With each tide chart and forensic simulation, the story moves further from legend and closer to a compelling possibility. From books to the Hollywood classic Escape from Alcatraz, 1979, the tale has become more than a manhunt. It's a symbol of human ingenuity pitted against institutional control. So what do you think? Did they outwit the system and survive? Or did the Bay ultimately claim them? Share your theory in the comments. If you love this mystery, be sure to like the video, subscribe for more deep dives into history and true crime, and tap the bell so you never miss a twist. And now click on the next video. What we found there will leave you speechless.